Can anyone hear me? The display in the cafeteria. People have to know. They have to see.
Allison was right. The display is a lie.
After a daring leap over the silo's rails, Juliet fortunately lands on the level below, narrowly avoiding any severe injuries. Knowing that the raiders are right behind her, she quickly rises to her feet and sprints away, evading capture and vanishing into the complex streets of the silo. After witnessing Juliet's escape, Sims rushes to inform Bernard, who realizes that this puts them in a precarious situation. Upon leaving Bernard's office, Sims instructs the head of the raiders to provide security for him and his family. However, he's aware that Bernard might not approve of this, as all available raiders are supposed to be searching for Juliet, not providing personal protection. Later that day, Camille, a former judicial raider and Sims' wife, arrives at their home with their 5-year-old son, Anthony. Before entering the apartment, she's approached by raiders from Judicial, who were assigned by Sims to accompany her at all times. Knowing that the raiders' presence would disturb her son, she sternly sends them away, telling them that she doesn't need them, as she knows she's safe inside her apartment. Yet, once inside the apartment, Camille instantly notices shattered glass on the floor and becomes suspicious that there might be an intruder. She quietly walks Anthony to his room and assures him that everything is fine, instructing him to stay there while she prepares him a snack. After leaving Anthony's room and closing the door, Camille pulls out a gun from her purse. As she looks around the apartment, she notices a hard drive on a table. Intrigued, she approaches the drive. That's when Juliet suddenly appears behind her, holding a knife to her throat. In a quiet but confident tone, Juliet tells Camille that she won't hurt her unless necessary. She then walks Camille into the kitchen, gives her handcuffs, and instructs her to shackle herself to a pipe bolted to the wall. Inside his office, Bernard discovers that Juliet has been meeting with Lucas over the past few days. This prompts him to summon Lucas into the office for a discussion. As soon as Lucas arrives, Bernard wastes no time to confront him about his recent conversations with Juliet, specifically the one regarding an illegal hard drive. Even though Lucas is being completely honest, telling Bernard that he didn't help Juliet open the drive, as he knew that would be a crime, Bernard is still dissatisfied and decides to throw him in jail for the time being. Despite being ordered by Judicial not to go to Juliet's apartment, Billings cannot resist the temptation and decides to sneak in. Once inside, he starts to thoroughly search the place and eventually discovers the travel book that Juliet had hidden there. As he flips through the pages, he's unexpectedly struck by the stunning images he sees, realizing that if a book like this were to be found by Judicial, it could cause serious trouble. He decides to rip out his favorite page from the book and burn the rest of it in the stove. In Sim's apartment, Juliet begins to access the hard drive using his computer, realizing that it must have the necessary authorization, as he is the head of security for Judicial. However, upon entering the hard drive, she discovers that it is password protected. Undeterred, she searches through the bag that Holston had left her and finds Allison's notes, which include the drive's password. With this information, Juliet is finally able to gain access to the contents of the drive. Simultaneously, realizing that Juliet is fully focused on the computer, Camille begins picking the handcuffs using a small pin. Inside the control room, Bernard expresses his doubts to Sims about assigning him as his shadow to control the silo. He explains this by saying that Sims has been making grave mistakes as of late, including his failure to capture Juliet and his decision to assign raiders to guard himself and his family instead of searching for her. As Sims tries to defend himself, he's interrupted by the technicians of the control room, who inform him that they've managed to locate the hard drive as it's been connected to a computer in the silo. Upon checking the address of the computer, Sims instantly realizes that it's his apartment. Knowing that his family is in danger, he rushes out of the room, gathers a team of raiders, and sprints to his home. Meanwhile, as Camille continues her lockpicking efforts, Juliet discovers a file on the drive, named Start Here. Upon opening it, a video of George starts playing on the computer. Having never seen a video recording before, Juliet is shocked to see George in front of her on the screen. Knowing that she would be perplexed, George immediately starts explaining to Juliet what's going on and informs her that this is a video message he'd recorded specifically for her to see. While Juliet is engrossed in the video, Camille finally manages to free herself. Quietly, she picks up a hammer and sneaks up behind Juliet. However, instead of hurting her, Camille decides to help Juliet by advising her to run away immediately, as she knows that the judicial forces will be on their way to apprehend her. By the time Sims and his team of raiders arrive at the apartment, Juliet has already made her escape with the hard drive. Despite the disappointment of failing to capture Juliet yet once again, Sims is relieved that his wife and child are safe and unharmed. Later that day, Danny, a tech-savvy worker from the IT department, arrives at Patrick's apartment after being told he's needed for something important. Upon entering, Danny is surprised to see Juliet there. He immediately becomes suspicious, as she's the sheriff and he fears she may be trying to entrap him, especially since he used to deal in relics. However, Juliet assures him that he's completely safe and explains that she just needs his help with the hard drive. Danny recognizes the drive as the one he owned in the past, but was unable to access it as it required a password, which caused him to sell it to Regina, who then gave it to George. With this knowledge, Juliet informs Danny that she knows the password required, but needs his expertise to access the drive on Patrick's home computer. Being as technologically inclined as he is, Danny assures Juliet that he can access the drive on any computer without any issue. However, Juliet warns him that once the drive is connected to a computer, the control room technicians will be able to track its location. To counter this, Danny masks the drive's signal to make it appear as if it were coming from a different address, allowing them to access its contents without being located. Upon accessing the drive, Juliet resumes watching George's video. In the footage, George confesses that he initially used her for her knowledge of the mechanical level and all of the connections she has within it. However, as time passed, he started to develop genuine feelings for her, and he expresses this by saying that he loves her. Touched by George's sincerity, a tearful Juliet softly says that she loves him too. Before ending the video, George directs Juliet to a specific file on the drive named Jane Carmody Cleaning. This file seems to contain footage from the perspective of a person, presumably Jane Carmody, who went outside of the silo many years in the past. Once Juliet opens the file, she is in utter disbelief, as she watches the same video that Allison and George saw together all those years ago, which shows a lush landscape teeming with green trees and birds gracefully flying across the blue, cloud-filled sky.